What happens when one of Hollywood's toughest leading men faces off against one of daytime TV's most outspoken hosts? What was supposed to be a simple conversation about whether technology has improved or damaged society turned into a heated debate that had producers on edge and viewers glued to their screens. You've never seen Mark Wahlberg like this, and it all ended with a dramatic exit no one saw coming.
The studio lights glowed brightly as the familiar theme music of The View faded, giving way to the morning chatter of the hosts. But there was a subtle electricity in the air that day, a sense that this episode wouldn't be like the others. Sitting at the iconic table was Mark Wahlberg, actor, producer, and businessman, known not just for his blockbuster roles, but also for his outspoken opinions on fitness, family, and, recently, the effects of technology on society. Joy Behar, one of the show's most vocal and sharp-witted hosts, wasted no time diving straight into it. "So, Mark," she began, leaning on her elbow and flashing a knowing smirk, "you've been in the headlines lately talking about how technology is, quote, ruining society. You've said we should all put down our phones and look up. Is that really how you feel, or is this just you being dramatic for attention?" The audience gave a small laugh, sensing the slight jab. Mark smiled politely, but there was a firmness in his posture. "Joy, I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. Technology is a tool, but the way we use it, it's breaking down real human connection. Families used to talk at dinner. Now half of them are staring at their phones. Kids used to play outside. Now they're glued to screens for hours. We've traded real life for digital life, and I think that's dangerous." Sunny Hostin and Whoopi Goldberg glanced at each other, clearly sensing the debate heating up faster than expected. Joy waved her hand dismissively. "But isn't that just life evolving? I mean, every generation says the next one is doing things wrong. People said TV was ruining kids in the 50s, that rock music was destroying morality. Yet here we are, thriving." Mark's jaw tightened slightly. He rested his forearms on the table, locking eyes with Joy. "Thriving? Depression rates among teens have skyrocketed. Anxiety, suicide rates, loneliness, all going up. We're more connected digitally, but more disconnected emotionally than ever before. That's not thriving, that's a warning sign." The audience murmured in agreement, with some light applause echoing around the room. Joy gave a quick smirk, but her tone sharpened slightly. "So what's your fix, Mark? Ban smartphones? Turn off the internet? I just don't see how saying, 'put down your phone,' solves a cultural shift this big." Mark took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "It's not about banning anything. It's about taking responsibility. Parents need to parent. Adults need to engage with each other. You can't outsource love, communication, and family time to a screen. People need to remember what life feels like outside of Wi-Fi." The audience applauded louder this time, some even shouting their agreement. Joy raised her hands as if to calm them down, but glanced back at Mark with a look that said she wasn't about to back off. Whoopi, sensing the energy shift, interjected lightly, Okay, we're already cooking here, folks. Let's take a breath before somebody throws a phone at somebody." The audience laughed, but the atmosphere was charged. Mark leaned back in his chair, calm but resolute, while Joy adjusted her papers, clearly gearing up for the next round. It was clear, this wasn't going to be a friendly, casual conversation. This was going to be a clash of ideologies, and the sparks had just begun to fly.
Joy Behar leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms like a seasoned poker player ready to call a bluff. "Mark, you're painting technology as if it's some villain. But let's be real, you wouldn't have half the opportunities you have today without it. Streaming platforms, social media promotion, online audiences. Your career thrives because technology evolved." The audience murmured, sensing Joy had landed a sharp point. Mark, unfazed, tilted his head and smiled slightly. "You're right, Joy. Technology has helped my career. I'm not anti-technology, I'm anti-dependency. There's a difference. If I use a phone to connect with fans, that's great. But when people spend 6-7 hours scrolling through strangers' lives instead of living their own, that's a problem, and it's a big one." Joy leaned in, resting her chin on her hand, tone dripping with sarcasm. So, what do you want people to do? Have family dinners every night like it's 1955? Read newspapers instead of scrolling? I mean, come on, Mark. This is the world we live in now. People adapt. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, his Boston accent cutting through as his tone grew sharper. It's not about pretending it's 1955. It's about remembering what actually makes us human. Families used to talk about their day. Kids learned how to communicate face-to-face. Now, they text each other from the same room. That's not adapting, Joy. That's isolating ourselves. A small ripple of applause came from the audience, a sign that Mark's point had hit home with some viewers. Joy straightened, sensing the crowd leaning slightly toward Mark, and fired back. But isn't that just your perspective? You grew up in a completely different environment. Kids today are thriving in different ways. They're smarter. They know technology like the back of their hand. The world's changing, Mark. Maybe you're just nostalgic for your childhood. Mark leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. His voice was steady but carried weight. Joy, I grew up with nothing. No money, no technology. What I did have was community. Real, physical, tangible relationships. You can call me nostalgic if you want, but there's something we're losing here. Mental health is at an all-time low, and you know what the biggest link is? Overuse of social media. That's not nostalgia talking, that's science. The audience clapped, louder now, with a few audible amen shouts from the back. Sunny Hostin, sensing the debate tightening, interjected cautiously. Mark, let me play devil's advocate here. A lot of people credit technology for keeping families connected. FaceTime for grandparents, long-distance relationships that can thrive, even telehealth for seniors. Isn't that a big win? Mark nodded, conceding the point, but quickly countered. Sure, Sunny, there are positives. But you can't build your entire life on a screen and call it connection. That's like eating junk food and calling it nutrition because it has calories. Technology should help our lives, not replace living them. And right now, for too many people, it's doing the replacing. Joy threw her hands up. But people choose this life, Mark. Nobody's forcing anyone to scroll TikTok or binge on Instagram. That's on them, not on technology. Mark didn't even blink. No, Joy, that's on all of us. On parents for not setting boundaries, on companies for designing apps to be addictive, on society for normalizing it. We've created a culture where attention spans are shrinking. Kids are comparing themselves to filtered fake lives online, and we just shrug it off like it's no big deal. The crowd applauded again, louder this time, and even Whoopi Goldberg gave a slow nod, clearly impressed by the fire in Mark's voice. Joy, feeling the momentum shifting, went for a personal angle. But Mark, you've posted movie promos on Instagram. You've used TikTok to reach younger audiences. Isn't it a little hypocritical to say technology's ruining society while you benefit from it? Mark paused, then leaned closer to the table, speaking with measured intensity. That's the difference, Joy. I use technology. I don't let it use me. I don't sit on my phone for 6 hours comparing myself to strangers. I don't let my kids drown in social media validation. We have boundaries in my house, and I think a lot of families need to start doing the same. The audience erupted in applause, some even standing. Joy shook her head, but she smiled, clearly enjoying the fiery back and forth. All right, Mark, you're on fire today. I'll give you that. But this is a complicated world, and there are no easy answers. People aren't going back to flip phones because you said so. Mark grinned faintly, but his eyes stayed serious. No, they're not. But maybe they can start looking up once in a while, before it's too late. The audience clapped once more, the atmosphere thick with tension and raw emotion. Even the camera zoomed in, capturing the tight expressions on both faces as the commercial break loomed.
The commercial break ended, but the tension in the studio had not eased. Mark Wahlberg sat forward, hands clasped tightly, as though holding back something heavy. Joy Behar, sensing his intensity, tried to pivot the conversation back into lighter territory. So, Mark, she said, giving a practiced television smile, if you had one magic wand to fix this technology problem, what would you do? Ban social media? Shut down all the Wi-Fi for an hour a day? I mean, realistically, what's your solution here? Mark exhaled slowly, then leaned into the mic, his voice lower, almost vulnerable now.
Joy, I'm not talking about bands or magic wands. I'm talking about real lives. Can I tell you something personal? Joy hesitated, then nodded. The audience leaned in. Mark shifted in his chair, his voice cracking ever so slightly. When I was 14, my family didn't have much. We didn't have gadgets or cable TV, but we had each other. My mom, my brothers, my sisters, we sat around a tiny kitchen table and actually talked. That connection, that grounding, kept me from falling apart when things got rough in my life. The audience grew silent, captivated. Now I look around today, and I see kids who have everything except that connection. I mentor young people, Joy. I talk to them every week, and do you know what they tell me? They're lonely. They're anxious. They spend hours scrolling, comparing themselves to fake lives online, and they feel like they don't measure up. Some of them, he's stopped for a moment, clearly emotional. Some of them tell me they've thought about ending it. 14-year-old kids who think their life isn't good enough because of a phone. The audience gasped softly. A middle-aged woman in the front row nodded solemnly, tears welling in her eyes. Joy shifted in her seat, her usual quick wit softened by the weight of Mark's words. That's hard to hear, Mark, but isn't that a parenting issue? Isn't that about guiding kids, not blaming technology as a whole? Mark leaned closer, his voice sharper now, but still tinged with raw emotion. It's both, Joy. Parents need to step up, absolutely. But when billion-dollar companies design apps to keep kids addicted, when they use algorithms to hook them in, it's not just on parents. It's like handing a kid a bag of candy and blaming them when they get sick. The system is built to keep us staring at screens, and our kids are paying the price. The crowd erupted into applause, a wave of support breaking the tension briefly. Joy glanced at the audience, then back at Mark, clearly trying to regain footing. I hear you, I do. But technology isn't going anywhere. Maybe we should be teaching kids how to handle it instead of painting it as this evil force that's ruining lives.
Mark's eyes narrowed. You don't think kids know how to handle it? They're drowning in it. And adults? They're not much better. We have grown men and women who can't go 5 minutes without checking their phones. Families sitting in silence at dinner tables because everyone's in their own digital bubble. And we just say, oh, that's normal now? That's heartbreaking to me. Whoopi Goldberg, usually the calming presence, finally interjected. Mark, you're clearly passionate about this, but Joy's got a point. We can't turn back time. So what's the balance? How do we fix it? Mark turned toward Whoopi and then back to Joy, his voice steady but heavy with conviction. It starts with putting people before screens. It starts with making family time sacred again. I'm raising my kids to value face-to-face conversation, to work with their hands, to be present. And you know what? They're happier for it. That's what I'm saying, Joy. We've got to wake up before we raise a whole generation that doesn't know how to actually live. The audience erupted again, louder now, several people standing to clap. Joy sat back, silent for a moment, her lips pressed tightly together. Mark, you're clearly passionate about this, and I respect that, she said, her voice softer than before. But are you saying people who embrace technology are less human? Mark's response came without hesitation. I'm saying people who depend on it for validation, for connection, for meaning. Yeah, they're losing something deeply human, and I don't want that for my kids or for anyone's. For a moment, the studio was silent, except for the faint hum of cameras and the soft shuffle of audience members shifting in their seats. Mark sat back, visibly emotional, as Joy picked up her note cards and shuffled them nervously. The debate had shifted. No longer just about technology, but about the core of human connection itself. And it was clear, this clash was only just beginning to boil over.
Joy Behar shifted in her seat, squaring her shoulders and fixing Mark Wahlberg with a pointed look. Mark, let's be honest here, she began, her tone growing sharper. This whole thing sounds like one big nostalgia trip. You're acting like kids laughing at TikTok dances or people FaceTiming their families is destroying civilization.
Come on, we can't just scare people into believing the sky is falling. Mark's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, his hands pressing into the table as he spoke, voice steady but simmering. Joy, this isn't about nostalgia. It's about reality. Look at the numbers. Teen depression, suicide rates, anxiety levels. You can't just dismiss those as kids being dramatic. We've never been more connected online, but more isolated emotionally. And we're acting like it's fine because, hey, at least we can post selfies and scroll all day. Joy smirked slightly, almost dismissively, and shot back. But you're cherry-picking statistics, Mark. Every generation has its struggles. You think kids in the 70s or 80s didn't deal with depression or family issues? The difference now, we have platforms to talk about it and find support. Technology isn't the enemy, ignorance is. That last line drew some applause, but it was half-hearted. The audience's loyalty seemed split now, their heads turning between the two like spectators at a tennis match. Mark exhaled deeply, trying to contain his frustration, but then leaned forward again, voice rising. Joy, you're missing the point. Technology isn't inherently evil, but the way it's being designed is. These companies are exploiting human psychology for profit. They're creating addicts, and the victims are kids. You think that's progress? You think a 10-year-old scrolling Instagram for 6 hours a day and feeling worthless is just life evolving? The audience gasped, and several people started clapping, chanting, "That's right!" Joy held up a hand toward the crowd, but Mark wasn't done. You sit here and talk about embracing the modern world, but at what cost? Families don't talk anymore. Couples sit in silence, both staring at screens. Kids would rather film themselves than experience real life. And you're telling me I'm overreacting? No, I'm telling you we're heading off a cliff. Joyce snapped, her voice now carrying its own edge. You know what, Mark? You sound like every old man yelling at clouds. Back in my day, we played outside and everything was perfect. It wasn't perfect then, and it's not perfect now. People evolve. Society evolves. You can't just cling to some romanticized past and shame everyone for moving forward. Mark froze for a second, his eyes locking onto hers. The audience collectively held its breath. He leaned in, voice low and cold. Don't talk to me about shaming, Joy. I've worked with kids who've lost themselves to this. Kids who feel invisible. Kids who think likes and followers are what make them valuable. I've seen parents cry because they don't know how to reach their own children anymore. That's not a romanticized past. That's happening right now. The studio went silent except for a few scattered claps. Joy fumbled with her note cards, clearly unsettled, but pushed again. So what, Mark? What's your big solution? Should we all throw our phones in the ocean and live like monks? It's not realistic, and you know it. Mark's chair screeched slightly as he shifted forward, gripping the edge of the table. It's realistic to put family before a screen, Joy. It's realistic to teach kids they're worth more than their online profile. And it's realistic to hold these tech companies accountable for what they're doing. But we won't do any of that as long as people keep excusing it because it's convenient. Joy shook her head, smiling tightly, but Mark's next words cut the air. You know what? I don't think you get it, and I'm done explaining. The audience gasped audibly as Mark suddenly pushed his chair back, stood up, and pulled off his mic pack. The camera tried to follow him as he stood there for a moment, staring at Joy. I came here to have a real conversation, but if all we're going to do is joke about kids' lives and call people old-fashioned for caring, I'm out. With that, Mark walked off the set, the audience erupting into shouts and applause, some cheering him, others booing in shock. Social media clips would soon make this moment one of the most talked-about TV confrontations of the year.
If you thought this clash was intense, you're not alone. The internet is already on fire about it. What do you think? Has technology improved our lives or made us more disconnected? Drop your thoughts below. We read every comment. And if you love these dramatic celebrity moments, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next big clash. Trust us, it only gets bigger from here. If you thought this clash was intense, you're not alone. The internet is already on fire about it. What do you think? Has technology improved our lives or made us more disconnected? Drop your thoughts below. We read every comment. And if you love these dramatic celebrity moments, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next big clash. Trust us, it only gets bigger from here.